Both of them are 2-0, making it to the finals of the draft.
Both players really wanted to win the die roll in this one.
All right. First game, Anthony Jestes on 5. He is your Azorius player. Not exactly Azorius control. Some of these white creatures actually size up very nicely, but
Woof.
turn 1, Kari Zev off Mana Crypt. We only spent one of the... He actually made 1 mana too many.
Right, what a waste. But he did get a creature that has more damage output than a 1-drop, and has the possibility of maybe having Chandra Torch of Defiance in the second turn of the game.
Alex goes to 17 off that Mana Crypt. Of the things he could have played on turn 1, that's actually one of the weaker ones. We see cards in this deck like Goblin Rabblemaster available. But here comes some more damage. We have Monastery Swiftspear, Zergo Bellstriker.
And that's going to be dashed.
Okay.
He has plenty of mana to play with, so this is just kind of a way to give it haste by spending 2 every turn. Got to look at the hand. There are a lot of lands there, so this play certainly makes sense.
And that's enough to get Force of Will pitching Spell Pierce from Anthony. Does not want to see Zergo.
Anthony would have so much preferred being on the play, being able to Spell Pierce that Mana Crypt.
4 damage comes in. Anthony down to 15. And a Spell Queller, Restoration Angel, and 1 more. He's going to need some mana sources.
Right.
And he finds one with Flooded Strand.
Costs a life, but it's mana. The hand is pretty poor on the draw. If he had Mox Pearl this turn, Geist of St. Traft could be pretty reasonable, and the Mana Crypt is going to do him some help on the life total front.
Swing back for 4 more. Anthony down to 11, carries Zev, putting out the damage.
And Beebe's hand was just 3 lands, but one of them is this Mutavault. He couldn't deploy that previously because he was using all of his red mana, but it's kind of like casting a Goblin Guide on this turn, something like that. Just another 2-power attacker. Really easy to fire that up with the extra Mana Crypt mana.
Jestes down to 10. He's looking at 6 damage on the following turn, and this is what the mono red deck does.
Right.
In situations like this, here you mentioned Sulfuric Vortex just being one of the better cards in the matchup.
Yeah, that frequently just closes games like this out.
And Anthony hits land 3, or rather he hits Mox Pearl, which is going to be the same thing.
Would you need to make a land drop and you draw Mox? That's really the floor. That's about
it's
as
a land.
bad as they come.
Here's Mox Pearl. Choice of 3 drops in Spell Queller and Geist of St. Traft. He will pass. Leaves up Spell Queller. Alex, no more damage off the Mana Crypt just yet. Draws another mountain.
Yeah, when I was looking at the 12 mountain mana base, there's also 2 colorless lands and a strip mine. He has the Mox and the Mana Crypt. I was really interested in shaving a land from this deck.
And here's Spell Queller from Anthony. He's going to get to make a free block. He will take care of Mutavault. Takes 4, goes to 6, but he's started to stabilize here.
Yeah, there's a blocker online. Restoration Angel, if he's able to produce a land, can also do some neat things with the Spell Queller.
Looks like Vendilion Click drawn there.
It's another good blocker.
Do you like leaving that up or jamming Geist of St. Traft?
I like the click quite a lot better.
And goes over to Alex. Says wait for the Mana Crypt. And I like this. Anthony's not using that Vendilion Click during draw step. He wants to surprise Alex with it in combat.
Yeah, you really just need to get these creatures off the table, and most of what the mono red deck does is a lot of instants usually in these kinds of decks.
And here's the swing, and now in combat, Anthony will make Vendilion Click.
Curious to see. There was an argument for wheeling his own Geist of St. Traft.
3 mountains in Alex's hand. So Anthony, cannot do that. Carry Zev has Menace, so we'll block up and make a legal block. He can double block the Carry Zev, trade it for Vendilion Click, or he can just block Ragavan.
Carry Zev also has First Strike, so that just takes care of Vendilion Click, and then there's 2 on a 1/3, right?
It's got so many keywords. I think you're absolutely right. I missed it, as did Anthony. And that blocks means he loses the Vendilion Click. Goes down to 4. It's going to be tougher. He did draw the 4th land here, so Restoration Angel can join.
Yeah, that is a good blocker, and it will cover any spell that the Spell Queller could tag.
Right, that first strike, the entirety of Carry Zev's time in Standard, I don't know if I ever heard, it wasn't very relevant.
Didn't
so
come up a ton.
Yeah, 1/3s generally don't have that kind of keyword. But a swing again, and now Restoration Angel in play. Alex still on all mountains.
There's a double block that works. It's a little bit awkward, though, because you go down to 2 on this, and you turned off your ability to Restoration Angel, your Spell Queller, to hit a spell.
Right. And that's what Anthony will do. He'll go down to 2, taking the damage off Ragavan. But the board is stable at the moment, and that Mana Crypt actually is chipping away at Alex in a very real sense.
Yeah, Anthony also starts to have some fine attacks here.
And Anthony drew Counterspell.
It's a great draw. Turns him off of casting Geist this turn, but it's a lot better than Geist. Yeah. You know that the hand's just a bunch of blanks.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing him race back. I mean, Restoration Angel plus that Mana Crypt could turn the tide. That's what he's debating. He's going to swing with Spell Queller.
A card you see in cubes sometime that's not available in the cube at all, not in Beebe's deck, is Exquisite Firecraft, which would be... Well, I guess there's no instants and sorceries in Graveyard anyway.
Alex down to 9 off the Mana Crypt. Draws Faithless Looting.
Oh, that is excellent.
This
you
is
can't
the
counterspell
best.
your way out of that.
Wow. Draws a Mox and Bomat Courier. Well, hold on. You want to keep this... The Mox would prowess the Swift Spear, right?
That is interesting, but it's tough to attack the Restoration Angel. But yeah, it's probably better than Mountain, and he agrees, ends up discarding the 2 mountains.
Here's Faithless Looting, so that's another prowess for Monastery Swift Spear. And now Anthony has to decide, does he counter here? So Swift Spear up to 3/4. No, he does not. Here's Earthshaker Kenra and Hazoret. Oh my.
Discarding the Kenra is something I'm pretty interested in, as it's not a spell you have to cast.
Right, we can just eternalize it.
And just Mox Hazoret. If the Mox resolves, you get to cast the Hazoret.
Well, the Mox also prowesses the Swift Spear to 4. So here's Hazoret. That'll earn the counterspell, but Anthony is still chump blocking with Restoration Angel.
Just gets to eat the Angel. That's a huge swing for Beebe.
Yeah, it's a 4/4. Blocks. Angel is down. There was Mox, Looting, and Looting.
And next turn, that Earthshaker Kenra threatens to be eternalized.
Well, it does, but Geist of St. Traft has hexproof. If Alex has no more plays, he could take 1 off the Swift Spear.
That's true.
He hits Alex down to 7.
The Mana Crypt could end up being a big factor of that exchange. Oh, this is Glenalander Archmage, though. That's not going to do it just on the table.
Right. Earthshaker Kenra in the graveyard is going to be too much here. He needs a hexproof blocker, and that's not going to do it. Eternalizes the 4/4. No blocks on Glenalander Archmage, and that's going to send Alex Beebe to victory.
Yeah, certainly looks like a Game 1 win to me.
Archmage can't block. Here's a swing for 5. Anthony picks up the cards.
And that means you got to win at least 1 on the draw against the mono red deck with Strip Mine.
You do that is a deck that's going to utilize Strip Mine really well.
And Beebe's draw really did not cooperate for a long time there. And
yeah, for a second it looked like these flying creatures from Anthony plus that Mana Crypt meant he might be able to stabilize and race back. But what a draw in Faithless Looting, especially with that specific hand. He had all this colorless mana with Mana Crypt. He had too many extra mountains.
Yeah, Jestes had just drawn Counterspell, and it looked so good for him. But Faithless Looting just being 2 spells just broke right through that.
Yeah, there weren't very many cards that Counterspell wouldn't cover, but that was exactly it. And that's some pretty neat stuff. Players are going to kind of review their sideboards over here. For Alex's deck, there's not going to be too much in this matchup. He's doing his Game 1 thing. I mean, right?
I mean, it's just a bunch of red cards, right? Like, the ones that deal the most damage are in. They're reviewing card pools here, so he gets to see Batterskull if he does a deep dive there, which makes Rampaging Ferocidon a good option.
Right, that wasn't, and you said that, it wasn't registered in the main deck.
Right. Beyond that, I mean, I guess you know that your opponent's a blue deck. That makes the Wheel of Fortune less inviting. Don't love giving
I don't want to give them
a bunch of draws at counter spells and reactionary cards.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it if it's the last card in Alex's hand, but because Anthony's also really heavy on these 1-drops, it feels like I might just restock both players.
A lot of creatures to block on top of some counter spells.
If Anthony was the kind of blue-white deck where he had a bunch of, Sun Titans and large things like that.
I think it's a ratio of mana production to converted mana costs in the deck that I'm interested in looking at, right? If it's either a deck like this that has a bunch of 1-mana creatures that are easy to cast, or a deck that's full of signets and is capable of casting a lot of spells on a turn regardless.
Don't want to do it to either.
But if it's exactly a deck with a bunch of 3 and 4 mana spells, not much in additional mana production, that's where Wheel of Fortune could really shine.
Right. And that's how it seems to look here. On Anthony's side, yeah, I don't mind his deck in this matchup. A Vendilion Click looked particularly weak that game.
I actually vastly prefer the slower Azorius decks when I play against mono red.
Okay.
The creatures can block, there's something to that, but then your deck's also playing Sword of Fire and Ice, Sword of Feast and Famine, because you're trying to be the aggressor. That's the entire draw to this deck, and those cards are just glacial against mono red.
Even with the pro red on Sword of Fire and Ice, it's still going to be too slow.
The red deck often has access to artifact destruction, has a number of spells that can destroy the creature you're trying to equip in response. It's more of a liability than anything. If it was Sword of War and Peace and the upside was higher, contained life gain, I would be more in.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of these equipment you're not going to have time to get toward. You'd rather have your equipment be, well, things like Batterskull.
Right. Stuff like Restoration Angels, Spell Queller, I like those a lot.
Yeah. On paper, Anthony does have the tools to be able to answer here.
Another thing that he had in his main deck was Ravages of War, and this is just not a matchup for that.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to cast that card here.
In fact, that card, Armageddon, the stock in those goes dramatically down in Powered Cube, as opposed to something like a Legacy Cube. Your average opponent is going to have some amount of artifact mana, which really pushes back on the power level of those cards.
Right, both that. So Ravagers of War, the Portal 3 Kingdoms reprint of Armageddon, both in the cube, one in each player's pool here. Usually a sign that it's not the matchup for the card.
Right. Yeah, it's very likely that Beebe took that at some point with the consideration of going into white and playing a Boros deck with Armageddon. The spell suite certainly lines up with that.
Yeah, the effect of Armageddon is something mono red would be very interested in. Now, when you draft mono red in cube, splashing is often something you try to stay away from.
Especially if you're splashing for a card that doesn't deal damage.
Right. But yeah, looking at the card pool here on this cube, Alex really finding his lane early on with mono red.
Right. When you play a cube draft, there's always that draw. There's part of you that wants to play a sweet deck. I want to play something that does cool things every turn, and then somebody at the table has to be the red player.
What kind of card do you think? So when I turn to draft red in cube, it usually happens is I start on Lightning Bolt or something like that, and then I go a couple picks deeper, find that I'm 3 red cards in, and then I'll commit. What kind of card do you think draws Alex into this, and especially in a cube where powered cards aren't mono red cards?
Right. I did mention that he missed off Sulfuric Vortex, which is the highest pick of her mono red card. I think that a big thing for me is the context of pack 1, pick 1. When you open up a pack that doesn't have any power, and I have heard that he was past the Mox Sapphire, which I don't fully understand, but if the pack doesn't have power, doesn't have green mana acceleration, that just makes the red cards seem a lot better because you know there's a consistent deck that's often very open.
Colonnade go for Anthony. On Alex's side here in game 2, he starts on Bomat Courier. It is interesting. It seems like Alex identified that lane. Some of the top powered cards, you mentioned Sulfuric Vortex, Lightning Bolt, those top red picks actually didn't make it into his pool.
Right. He does have Goblin Guide, which is one of the more powerful red cards as well. That could be a draw. Strip Mine also in pretty high pick card that ends up being in the mono red deck more than other decks.
Turn 2 is Porcelain Legionnaire for Anthony Jestes. Has to pay 2 life for it, so some damage.
It's a fine blocker, but there's a lot of liability in paying life trying to block.
Yeah, I was going to say, Alex could draw something like Arc Trail, which is exactly the card he draws for the turn.
Right.
1 and 2 upstairs.
Oh, and this turn is so good. It's not just Arc Trail, it's Arc Trail off of Mutavault. He's technically playing a creature, too.
Yeah, so Anthony down to 15, then down to 14 on the attack. 2 cards under Bomat Courier. And he passes back, and Alex's hand is shaping up here. Engineered Explosives, the draw for Anthony. And it looks like he has Wasteland. That's not the matchup here.
Well, it doesn't often play against red, but it does play against Mutavault. I actually like having that Wasteland here.
Wasteland engineered explosives. We'll see where he goes. Explosives on one, plays Wasteland. Is he going to waste away the Mutavault? No, he decides to get rid of Bomat Courier immediately instead.
The ratio of cards in hand to cards under Bomat Courier would incentivize me to leave up both Wasteland and the activation there.
Yeah, there's going to be a bit of a punish because Monastery Swift Spear is now free to attack this turn.
Right, and he gets to fire up the Mutavault while the Wasteland is tapped. That gets in 2 more damage when you have an answer on the table. Now, if he has a 4-mana play this turn, that justifies things a little bit, though there was no reason that he had the jam when he did.
Anthony down to 11. Draws Tundra. Hand for him here, he looks like he has a Geist of St. Traft, a sword, a counterspell. He will say go.
I believe Nimble Obstructionist, the far card in the hand. So he's in a situation where he can only cast 1 card.
Yeah, if he casts Counterspell, he can Counterspell into Wasteland. And this Hellrider may force that.
Yeah. You can't just let that one
Yeah.
resolve.
And just to swing with Swift Spear, Anthony down to 10.
Yeah, and I have to imagine that if Beebe had a more efficient thing to do, he probably would have, though you're starting to play into Restoration Angel mana, which is an incentive to try to get a counterspell out of the hand, so you don't have to attack the Swift Spear into that.
So Anthony decides to Wasteland the Mutavault. And now draws a land here. What do you think of that play? It does stop him from getting to 5 mana for that sword.
Yeah, the thing about Wasteland is you can always just go to your turn and do it. It's a free action. So there's never a compelling reason to do it on your opponent's turn, barring some card on the battlefield forcing the action.
Mana Vault pumps Monastery Swift Spear.
Ooh, and there's Siege Gang Commander in the
I
hand?
do like that.
Yuck.
And it looks like Fire Blast.
That's good. That's a lot of damage.
This is a lot of damage.
I am about
Hold
ready
on.
to call this one over.
Jestes is at 8. Uh-oh. Mono Red's about to do the Mono Red thing. Here's Siege Gang Commander.
Yeah, this is just throw some goblins next turn, Fire Blast upstairs.
Yeah, if Alex gets an untap, Mono Red's going to take it home. It's looking at Wrath of God time. Anthony doesn't have it.
He's playing a lot
no.
of creatures. He's got Porcelain Legionnaire in his deck.
I don't think it's Glenelender Archmage time, and that was his draw.
No. Can't even go for the Sword of Feast and Famine, and it doesn't grant any kind of unblockability. This is just 3 spells that don't matter in this situation. And the Geist of St. Traft doesn't have good attacks, Goblin Token, Siege Gang Commander, or block with my 20-point life total. That's my favorite block.
Yeah. And this might be our last turn for Anthony Jestes. Glenelender Archmage, Nimble Obstructionist, and Sword of Feast and Famine are in the holdings, but Alex has resolved Siege Gang Commander, and he's going to get to untap with it. That's, by itself, Siege Gang is 8 points of burn.
Right. The mana doesn't quite do it in 1 turn, but you're exactly right.
Right, yeah.
Given it enough time.
This is going to happen.
Yeah.
And he's also got a Fire Blast.
Right. And the draw step.
And Anthony just has to say go. Yeah, Mana Crypt is just fine. Draw step for Alex. It's another red card.
I think it's Zergo. That would just kind of pass turn.
Sure.
Just pass turn. You can make an
Attack
attack.
the team,
May
sure.
as well attack. I mean, technically you can dash Zergo.
I like this. He's going to show all the cards here. Let's dash Zergo Bell Striker into play.
Yeah, with the mana working out the way it is, he still has 2 Siege Gang activations, so this is fine.
And he'll swing everything, not the Siege Gang.
Unfortunately, Zergo is not a goblin.
Okay. I think it'll be fine. Here's Nimble Obstructionist. Anthony's going to try to block.
Doesn't matter. Let him or don't. When you fire off 1 goblin, you got to do 2, so...
He says, okay,
Yep.
show me your block.
For all the difference that makes, let it happen.
4 creatures get through. That'll put Anthony to 4, and I think 2 goblin tokens will take care of it. Not to mention, he still had all these Fire Blasts. And Mono Red is cleaning house.
The fun police they call
Yeah.
it. I think it's pretty fun. I love this deck.
What's not fun about this?
You get to play with Cedric Phillips tokens.
5 damage in. He's going to sacrifice the 2 mountains. There's 4 more damage. There's more goblins on the board. Monster is going to prowess and eat the Geist of St. Traft 2.
Just take it all.
Goes to 1. There's a trade.
Well, let's see if Beebe sees
So you
it.
can see it. Yes, he does. And there's the handshake. Alex Beebe is your winner in the 10K Cube draft here. The Fun Police doing their job.
Right.
Yeah, look, that was